We all say that Sri Lanka has a massive asset. It was dealt a very good geography. The location is absolutely brilliant, but it has not dealt with that asset in a productive way. And the statistic that is completely challenging or is damning, as you know, the trade share of GDP going down from virtually 90% to 42, 43% today. So in a period of 25 years. In order to get back on track, for a small economy, there is no option but to trade. I think Sri Lanka has to decide what it wants to be, whether it wants to be open to the world or it wants to remain an island, truly an island, rather than just an island economy. Currently, it is closed, and to the extent that a small economy should not be.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to a brand new episode of Front Row here on Economy.lk. We're privileged to have with us Professor Sanjay Kathuria, who is no stranger to Sri Lanka. He's been a former economist at the World Bank, covered Sri Lanka quite extensively. Right now, he's the co-founder of the Trade Sentinel. He's also part of several think tanks, being a senior fellow at the Center for Social and Economic Progress, and is also an adjunct professor at the Georgetown University and also a visiting faculty at Ashoka University. We're privileged to have you, Sanjay, and thanks for being on the show.
Thank you, Sharon. Thank you for inviting me.
So, if you look at 2025, I think you can characterize it in two words in terms of being lot of trade turbulence taking place, and of course, a lot of that stemming from some of the policies that the U.S. President and the government has taken. Um, what's your current take on the global trade developments, but more from a South Asian perspective and the developments you've seen in South Asia?
Interestingly, what we had feared in 2025, early 2025, the trade would take a big hit after the April 2nd Liberation Day tariffs. That didn't quite transpire, even though uncertainty and remains highly elevated. But trade somehow has adjusted to that. Perhaps there was some front loading of trade happening. So global trade this year, I think, is expected to grow around 2.5%. Although again, next year's forecasts are more pessimistic, perhaps at around about 0.5% to 0.6% world trade volume growth. So, but risks remain very elevated, and that is the important point. And therefore, countries are busy trying to uh, seal deals that would make a larger percentage of their trade predictable, right? So, because to the extent that the US was a major trading partner for many countries, that part has become less predictable. So, they are busy trying to seal deals with other countries. Now, the for example, India is busy doing deals with sealed a deal with the UK, is working on a fast track with the European Union, and is working on several others. Now, how South Asia fares in this world is very hard to say. Currently and unfortunately, they are sort of moving in different directions, the eastern part of South Asia and the western part of South Asia, which is Afghanistan, Pakistan, being the western part. Uh, this is a prime opportunity for South Asia, actually, to seal, to do, to take advantage of all this unpredictability. And South Asia is the largest, fastest growing region in the world, so it can actually take advantage of this opportunity and create more trade within itself. But I think, unfortunately, things are not looking that good on the South Asian front for now.
You mentioned about doing more trade amongst the countries in South Asia. You've written extensively about trade integration in South Asia, and I think everyone quotes the statistics that despite being the fastest growing region, it's one of the lowest intra trade volume and so on, quite highlighted. And I think a lot of people have given solutions as to how this can be overcome. But in this backdrop, where from Sri Lanka's lens, how can it really approach South Asia integration and doing more trade even with the region? I mean, for example, Colombo Port depends a lot on transshipment cargo, not only to India but also to uh, countries like Bangladesh and so on. So, what can Sri Lanka do to really ensure that South Asia, or it trades more with South Asia and integrates the value chains?
You know, we all say that Sri Lanka has a massive asset. It was dealt a very good geography, right? So the location is absolutely brilliant. It's a very good hand, if you like, for Sri Lanka, but it has not dealt with that asset in a productive way. And the statistic that is completely challenging or is damning is the, as you know, the trade share of GDP going down from virtually 90% to 42, 43% today. So in a period of 25 years. Now, in order to get back on track and trade, for a small economy, there is no option but to trade. I think Sri Lanka has to decide what it wants to be, whether it wants to be open to the world or it wants to remain an island, truly an island, rather than just an island economy. Currently, it is closed, and to the extent that a small economy should not be. So, uh, in order to integrate better with South Asian value chains, it needs to, I think one major issue is the issue of FDI, getting high quality FDI, not one that is built up on the back of incentives or unpredictability or one on one deals, but based on a promise to create employment and exports and utilize the genuine advantages that Sri Lanka has, of which it has many, human skills, the location, natural raw materials, beautiful fresh products, and so many other things.
And I think when we talk about South Asia, we also look at India's growth story. And oftentimes people say that Sri Lanka can be like how Singapore was to China. And that's maybe a way out in terms of growth. Do you buy into that kind of theory, or Sri Lanka has a lot more to do really to be that Singapore to a China and or a Sri Lanka to the growth of India?
I think it is something that Sri Lanka should have an aspiration to, because India is the fastest growing large economy in the world by far, and the latest growth numbers are 8.2% for the last quarter, just released. So and there are in you don't even have to look so far as all of India. You have to look, the five states of southern India, which are, now GDP exceeding $1 trillion among between them, and growing much faster than the rest of India. Just creating linkages with that, it's about 265 million people out there, creating linkages of trade and investment. It's much more sophisticated than the rest of India. So there is a lot of technical and FDI and all. So that could be a symbiotic relationship, I think, and I think that's actually a very good. A kind of simile, sort of as Singapore was to China. I think Sri Lanka can be to India. Actually, that's very good. Yeah.
Sure. You've written a lot, I think, for Sri Lanka. Probably written a lot of World Bank recommendation reports for what Sri Lanka should do. Now that you're out, not in the World Bank anymore, but of course, can you have that depth of knowledge and insight in terms of the current context and the current journey of the present government, and where it wants to go on trade or where it wants to go on the reform journey, so that we don't, some of the symptoms of the crisis was that we haven't exported as much, or as you said, we haven't attracted the right amount of FDI, so we've been debt dependent. From that point of view, what kind of maybe top 2 3 reforms, or maybe certain fixes that we can do that can really maybe get our exports beyond 20 30 billion in the next 5 to 10 years?
Right. Yeah. So let's start with the big elephant in the room, right, which is debt. Right. So we know that it's a necessary but not sufficient condition for growth and exports and stability to have debt sustainable. Right. So I think uh, the one issue that I have with the debt trajectory, even under the IMF program, is that at the end of 2030, it remains elevated at 95% of GDP. Now, that's a massive number we're talking about. And we're talking a big drain on public finance, on interest payments, amortization, and so on. So I think assuming that we can't have another round of restructuring because you've just had one, uh, then what is the way out is to make sure that the denominator on the debt to GDP is really growing very fast. And that is actually India's strategy. India's debt is not small, it's 85% of GDP, but India's denominator has grown very fast for the last 25 years or so, or actually since 91 on average. But that's been the strategy in some sense, that you grow so fast that you don't allow the debt to become a problem. And it's less facile than it sounds to have a growth oriented strategy, because you have to do specific things in order to have a growth oriented strategy. So that's the number one thing that I mean, that's in a sense the sine qua non, something in the background, but you got to take care of it, make sure it doesn't spill over into the rest of the economy and create problems for exports and competitiveness. The second thing I think, which everybody in Sri Lanka knows by now, even though para tariffs is a very esoteric and nerdy word, but probably everybody in Sri Lanka must be knowing, or most people, at least educated people, must be knowing what para tariffs means, which is strange. You shouldn't have to know what para tariffs is, but these are these funny tariffs that are not called tariffs, but they are tariffs in all but name. And I, of course, as you said, I did a lot of work on that particular issue. And even though Sri Lanka's tariffs on average, MFN tariffs may be appear to be low, but actually, if you look at the overall tariff impact, it's not low at all because you include para tariffs. So they have to go. Para tariffs must go for the sake of prices. They create, obviously there is a lot of consumer orientation in the para tariffs. So it hurts them, it hurts the producer and exporter, and it creates this anti-export bias overall. You've got a good domestic market, so why care about export? So second thing is you need to tackle para tariffs and eliminate them in a time bound way, hopefully with the incentives from development partners, that will happen. The third thing area that I will focus on is skills, and I think Sri Lanka has not used that asset of its well. No country in the world can have all the skills on its own. I mean, look at the US, the biggest economy in the world. It's been have a thriving, despite all the recent noises, it has a thriving import of worker program, skills, H-1B program, uh, through which it complements its domestic skills and creates the most innovative economy in the world. Now, how can Sri Lanka hope that a small nation of 23 million people can have all the skills needed for the 21st century? It's a complex world out there, AI driven, climate change, all these things. You do not simply. So I think there is a mindset here, and somehow the incumbents who are the job holders, the skill holders, have have held the rest of the economy hostage in this closed mindset, and that I think has to change. That is a completely complementary. You can't just have import liberalization, but what are you going to create for export competitiveness? You need a wide range of skills, and the bottom line is, do you want jobs at home, or do you want jobs to go overseas? Because that's the argument that every every Bill Gates, every Musk, everybody in the US makes, tells the president that if you stop the flow of skills, then the same jobs are going to go overseas. So would you rather have foreign workers create jobs and create firms, so it'll be externalities, a big ecosystem, or would you rather have these people create jobs in other countries? So I think there are many other things we can, but I think these three things are, for me, current priorities for Sri Lanka. I think as economists we always like to give a long list, but I think it's actually, I've learned through gray hair that it's better to give a short list so that it can be done and it can help prioritize.
I like the preciseness because basically grow faster than your debt is growing. Focus on the tariff aspect of it, so you're trade competitive, and then of course the talent, and maybe open up for outward migration, inward migration in. So thank you, Professor Sanjay, for spending time with us, with our viewers, and for some of those insights. I think those were quite valuable as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. Thank you for having me, and I wish Sri Lanka well. And I should not end without actually paying my deepest condolences and sympathies for this cyclone and its impact on the people. And I wish Sri Lanka comes out of it quickly and stronger than before.
Yes. Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much.